Sorry about that. Let's check a look here. There we are. We seem to be live again. Sorry about that. I had to bounce the stream. For some reason, Blender has decided that when I should open something up, instead of opening up in the Blender directory, it should open up in my Documents folder, which is where I keep all of my business stuff that I'm not supposed to show people. So I just bounced it and told it to fucking go to the place it's supposed to go to. Not sure why they thought that was a good idea. Let's keep 8 different working directories and make sure that none of them match up ever. So this is the shader graph for Blender. And the Blender idea here is the same as everywhere else, as far as I can tell. But the problem I've got is I don't want a principled BDSF. I want a different shader base. Maybe I don't need one. Maybe in Blender it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and just duplicate this a couple of times and see whether or not it matters. So basically, the question is whether or not alpha actually works. It does not. So why the heck is it here? Maybe I shouldn't bother. I thought this was going to be easy. It doesn't appear it's going to be easy. It appears it's going to be extremely annoying. There we are. Does alpha not work? It doesn't appear to work even in the correct rendering mode. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Why have an alpha if it doesn't ever work? It might also be that this material is not the material we're using, but I think it is. I can change the BDSF over here. Okay, I see. It's not really a very good BDSF. It's not really a very good material editor if I have to go outside of the material editor to tell us what material to use. That's a little bit strange. So we got translucent and transparent. I think I want transparent. So if we look at the transparent BDSF, oh, it's got like a real flat color result, doesn't it? So that's an unlit result. And it also doesn't work. Fascinating. Maybe these no longer work. So as you can see, I put in some transparency, and there is no transparency. I don't know. We'll go ahead and not do that. I was trying to do something in Blender just to see whether or not it would work, and the answer is no, it doesn't work. It probably can work if I spend a lot of time on it and figure out how to do it. But that does seem like a big waste of everybody's time, so we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to drink some flavored water. Tastes like carbon dioxide. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at where we were in our fish setup. The last thing we've done is we created this fish bolus, which doesn't look too bad, but it has a lot of flaws because it uses Unity's built-in particle system to actually spawn and arrange the particles. And unfortunately for us, that isn't actually a very flexible or good tool. One of the biggest problems we've got with it is simply that the fish can't have behaviors, like they can't feed off of the ground or whatever. But we've also got an issue in that we're trying to set up not just fish, but foliage. So we're going to have to create a particle system that puts foliage on places. Now we've got some particles that are sort of foliage-esque. For example, down here you can see that this is growing a bunch of random green fluffs, which isn't set up to be convincing, it's just set up to remind me that it's possible. And what we can do is we can have a similar setup, but what this does is this uses a mesh-based particle drop. It uses the standard Unity particle spawner, but with the mesh renderer as the target. And you can even apply a mask so that it it feels a little bit more natural and doesn't clog the whole thing. We've talked about this before, but the core issue here is that we need a lot more plants. We need plants like these. We need green crap growing everywhere. And how do you do that? Well, the problem is that it's expensive to do that in any sort of manner that makes sense. The closest we've got is we can drop in a set of these billboard plants, but as you can see, they are thoroughly unconvincing. Another option is we could use a terrain-based splat system where we draw greenery at specific angles on these stone surfaces or on whatever surfaces we want. That would allow us to get some greens, but the greens would always be on a specific plane, like say the top, and that would be not really how it works underwater. Let me just pull up, so that I don't get too distracted by my own delusions here. Let me just pull up scuba dive and pull up some photos of some scuba dive stuff so that I don't get too distracted from what it actually looks like. Yeah, so the core issue is that when you go scuba diving, I don't know if you've ever seen this, in a place with coral, coral pretty much grows on everything, but there's a lot of different varieties. So basically what happens is you get this really complicated, fuzzy topology that makes everything softer. You can think of it sort of like a moss blanket, except for the blanket is made out of so many different kinds of coral. But the other thing about that blanket is that it doesn't just cover everything. It suddenly stops. So what we really want to have is some kind of soggy blanket that we can just drop over a scene, and it will put a coral surface on everything. I think that that's possible using a shader, but the problem is that I'm not sure. Let's try it. Let's try it using a shader. We can figure out the details later. So here we're using Rock BO1 Matte, which uses a legacy shader bumped specular. We're going to create a new shader because that's not going to be good enough for us at the moment. So we'll go down into materials, terrain. We have a fog card. We've got some top water. Time for a new one. It's going to be a new amplify shader surface. And basically, we're going to do the splat map thing, except for instead of using the vector, we're going to use noise. So close that down because it's named something dumb. And we're going to call this coral surfacing. Coral surfacer. And pop that open. Coral surfacer. There we are. All right, let's shrink this down, see if anybody's chatting. Oh, look, chat's going up a storm. That's a joke. Okay, so what we've got here is the coral surfacer. The coral surfacer is going to be an opaque shader for primarily stone surfaces. With that in mind, it's already set up pretty close to what we need, but we need a couple more details. First off, we're going to need some textures. There we are, texture sample. So we're going to need a texture sample that is a property called base texture, like so. And then we're going to also need one for our coral texture, and we may have multiple coral textures. I'm not going to say that this is the only time we're going to have one. But just to see how this works, we're going to start with just those and a normal map. So let's create a normal map. Normal map. And the normal map is obviously going to be a normal map. So we'll just drop this into normal. And now what we need to do is need to lerp between the base texture and the coral texture based on some noise. Noise. There we are. So there's some noise for us. And what we want is to get the 3D noise for this. And the way we do that is we get the world coordinate. There it is. We get the world coordinate and we multiply the world coordinate by some factor to get the correct adjustable value, right? We don't want it to always be the same size. So we'll call this noise scale. And that should work. Why is it? There it is. And we'll have the default value be 5. And we'll make the max value 300. I don't actually know if that's going to be any good. We'll have to find out. It's easy to fix. And then we just multiply these. Come on. There we are. Drop that into the size. I don't know why that's called size. It is clearly not size. It's location. Unless I'm misunderstanding. Like, the noise generator should output a number between -1 and 1. That's how it should work. But we'll see. I think that I know it. I think I've got it correct. It's just a matter of it having a weird name. And this is going to be called noise volume. Drop that into B. And then we're going to have to step it because we need a crisp edge. I've forgotten what this does. Step function returning A or B. That's right. I don't remember whether it's above or below, but it doesn't matter. Either one works. So then we're going to use the step to power a lerp. Boop. What we're going to want to do is just grab all this junk and move it so that we don't have it strangely skewed like that. Here is our alpha, and then here is our first, and then here is our second. And then that's going to go straight into the albedo. We can also multiply that by a color if we would like to, but for now this is enough for testing purposes. So let's go over into our project and set it up so that these rocks are using that shader instead. Kaboom. Alright, so those are the rocks with that particular material. And you can see that right now it's just garbage. So let's select some textures and get this going. So this is the rock B. So we're going to select the rock B diffuse. And then down here we'll select the rock B normal. And then here we'll select the coral, which we can use branches, I guess. The problem is that branches are transparent. We don't really want branches. We'll choose blue noise. And we'll replace it with something else later. Alright, so here you can see the setup that we've got, where we have some coral surfacing on these objects, just kind of scattered everywhere. So the thing we can do with this is we can change these properties to be visible rather than constants. We need properties because that's dumb. We also need to have one more, so pull this back over here. We're going to want to have a noise offset. Threshold. There we are. And that should also be a property. Save it. Save. Thank you. Werbus says hello. Hello, Werbus. We're trying some coral. So here we've got the noise volume, the noise threshold, the noise scale. The scale is 3, and if we increase the scale, you can see that it gets dense very, very quickly, which means that the scale is actually in the opposite direction of what I thought it was. So over here in the noise scale, we're going to go from 0.0001 to 1, and that should be more along the lines of what we actually want to do here. There we are. It also might be useful to divide the scale instead. But see, as we go up, these blotches get larger and larger, like so. What we're probably going to want to do is use two noises, one that is high scale and one that is low scale. But for now, I just want to see how it looks with a simple noise value. So this coral is obviously, this is not the coral that we plan to use in the long run. It's just a noise texture. But let's go ahead and set this up to be a little bit more convincing, which we'll do by adjusting my chair and making sure I'm not sliding across the floor. Oh, I must have closed the shader editor. There we are. So there are a couple of things we want to be able to do to make this more obvious. We're going to want to allow for more normal map stuff. And we're also going to want to allow for tinting and all sorts of details. So for that, we're going to pull these things back. Going to add in some colors. This is going to be the base color tint, which we'll set up at the default of white. I'm going to multiply. Boom, boom, and boom. And then we'll duplicate these two. Bring them down here. And this is going to be called, hello, there we are. It's going to be called Coral Color Tint, which we probably have to do something more complicated with. We'll get to that later. There we go. This normal map has to be changed out to a base normal map and a coral normal map. So base normal. Coral normal. All right, now for the rest of these, we have to put in some floats. Smoothness. Is that the only one we needed? I think that might be the only one we needed. We'll go ahead and give it a maximum of 2, I guess. All right, so with this in mind, we have to do a change to make it mark dirty, and then we should be ready to roll. You recompiled yet? All right. So now that we've got this set up, let's change this over into the Blue Noise normal map. Oh, we can also use the height map. There is no height map option. That's interesting. Huh. For some reason, I thought the height map was a simple embedded option. I guess I probably have to do a height map texture blend. Height map, splat map, blend strength. We'll work it out later. For some reason, I thought this was just a plug-and-play height map thing. Without the height map functionality, the rocks aren't going to look nearly as good because I rely on the height maps to make them look realistic. But the coral also looks pretty shit, so I guess we're even. Let's go ahead and adjust the textures a little bit. So here's the coral. Let's make it green. Not quite that green. There we are. That's not too unseemly. So, if we change the noise threshold, we should be able to make these just kind of go further or less far. Yeah, see? Let's go ahead and give it the proper noise setup, because what we actually need to do... Pink Hair says, hey. Hello, Pink Hair. So what we actually need to do is have 2 noises that add together, which is no big deal. We're basically just going to have 2 of these. Sorry, I'm trying to get the lines working here. There we are. And then what we'll have is we'll have 2 multiplies. With this one, A is just going to be a float value. We'll make it a constant. And we'll just put in 3. That autosave is a little bit aggressive now that I've got a lot of shit in scene view. Maybe I'll turn it off. There we are. So now what we're doing is we're multiplying 2 noises together. Since the noises range between -1 and 1, we're going to end up with a lot more positive values, but they're going to be a lot smaller. So let's go ahead and take a look here. If we bring the noise threshold to here. You can see how this is a lot more of an organic set of shapes, but it doesn't feel sparse or toothpastey. It's a lot more in line with what we want. But the problem is, it's not really very convincing in terms of appearing to be coral on top of a rock. We don't have any. These edges are just the worst. Let's go ahead and bump this up from 3 to 5. Because the 3 was giving us a lot of really straight edges. But even no matter what the edges are, it's a really, really sharp and ugly conversion. And the way that we want to get around that is by using a height map or something. So let's try and get the height map system working. I'm not sure if I can, to be honest. First off, let's see if I can turn off the autosave. I don't know how. I turned it on after much effort, and now I'm trying to turn it off, and I don't know how to do that. Oh well. So, the height map node is this thing, and I have no idea how this works. So we're going to open up the online reference. The height map texture blend node outputs a blend value on 0, 1 using following operation: saturate, power, height map, splat mask times 4, splat mask times 2. This value is useful when... Alright, so this is interesting. Let's just give it a shot. Let's just see what we can do here. So the height map will use another texture value. We'll work that out later. The splat map, the splat mask. Is this a texture? It is a texture. I'm not sure what's going on here. And then the blend strength. But I don't actually know what this does. Why did that happen? There. But I don't actually know what this does. Let's go ahead and just set it up into our... No, this outputs a value between 0 and 1. How do you use it? Oh, this is a height map texture blender. All this does is move between two textures based on your height map, which is what I already did using the noise map. So, I mean, I could take this noise map here and just pipe it into a height map, but I've already done the lerping myself. The only difference between this and what I'm doing now is it has soft edges, whereas mine has hard edges. But that's not what I want. I want the height map perspective trick. This is a terrain? No, it's not. It was sort of. It's objects in a terrain that I need to have coral on them. So I'm using the world coordinates to add coral to objects, which is useful because it means that if I have different objects that are near each other, the world coordinates will continue to move across them and we won't have weird gaps. But the problem is that I can't seem to figure out how to make this have that null map trick where you have where the height map trick rather, where you have a height map and, well, here, if I click on another rock like this one, oh, this doesn't have a normal map on it. Huh. Well, that's a legacy shader. Don't know why that one's using a legacy shader. Just because I'm lazy, I guess. Come on, pick this giant thing right here. This huge text... What the... Okay, pick this one. Pick literally anything. Oh, I know what the problem is. I've got my highlighter turned off. There it is. So I had been selecting it. I just couldn't see it. I did that because I was working with some pretty complicated stuff. Here, height map. This is what I want. It's kind of awkward that Unity uses the term height map, but here in this editor, when I use the term height map, it means something entirely different. I mean, they're both valid, but this one is annoying. I don't want to have to build our height map system ourselves because it involves like camera angle math. I mean, we could do like radial UV distortion. That would probably be something similar. No, I don't think it's here. Okay, well, let's try a different option. We do have the option to tessellate. So here's my question. If I were to tessellate, let's go ahead and pump this into tessellation. And we'll also pump it into local vertex offset by taking in the vert normal. And multiplying it by this. Let's just move that down. Oh, that's not where I want it. Undo. I want it up here. There we are. Parallax. Let's go ahead and try that. Okay, so here's a parallax mapping and a parallax offset. I bet one of those two is actually what I want. Let's also check for POM. You're right, it's called parallax. I couldn't remember what it was called, and it was really annoying me. So there's parallax mapping, and here's parallax offset. And then there's one more parallax, bidirectional parallax mapping. I don't actually know what these are, so we're going to just stick them in here for a second. You want parallax occlusion mapping? Is that what I want? Warning, text must be connected to controls side. If you can put comments here, why the fuck aren't there comments in all of these? Whatever. Reference plane. Reference plane lets you adjust the starting reference height. Deepen ground, raise ground. Any value above 0 might cause distortion. Okay, clip edges. We'll look into that in a minute here. Since we've already built the tessellation option, let's just try it out and see whether or not we can get this to... oh, it broke. That is an interesting error. So it's not this the... Let's just distessellate it. Huh? Why would the local vertex offset be... I turned blue. Ah. All right, so the local vertex offset. You can see how it's working. Float. Pink hair tells me that parallax occlusion mapping is what I want. It's a function, which means it probably is what I want because it's not just a node, it's like a complicated function system. So we'll look into that in a bit. But basically what I've just done is I've told it to push the verts out when they're green. But the problem here is that, well, that's actually more or less how I envisioned it. It's just not very good. Let's bring this from 0.1. Oh, that's the problem. I brought it down to 0.01 instead of 0.1. Come on, let's resave because you did change. All right, so this is more like what I was thinking about. The only problem with this is that the interior faces here are rock, and I can fix that just by changing the threshold a little bit. But I'm sort of just looking at it and seeing what I've got. And what I've got is, it looks like it's automatically attempting to tessellate based on camera range, which gives us some crawling results, as you can see. I'm not telling it to tessellate, and that's certainly not the rock is not that dense of a mesh, so the fact that it kind of pops in with tessellation as I get closer kind of interesting. I think the height mapping might be better, but I'm surprised it's doing automatic tessellation, because these are not verts. This is not on the mesh. This is not where there is a line of verts, as you can see. So it's creating a line of verts to try and make this work. But it's also not mapping one-to-one with the green region, which it should be. You can see how in many of these cases it's... Well, maybe that's part of the rock. No, that's not part of the rock. Obviously, 0.1 is way too high. Let's go ahead and just adjust this a couple more times because it's curious, and I think I might be able to use it for something. So this is obviously too much. Let's just bring it down. Edge length. This is left over from something. That's something that you might have to set if you're doing tessellation. I'm not sure what's causing this, because this is a tessellation thing. You can see how as I lower the edge length, the edges get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. That's a tessellation tool. I'm not sure why they decided to auto tessellate, but I mean, I'll take it, I suppose. There are still a couple of unfixed questions, which we'll figure out in a minute here. One of those is the float, which I didn't make into a property because I'm an idiot. Oh, it's called Float 01 because that's obviously the right name for it. So, with this we do get a little bit of body to it. But you can see how there are some weird errors here where it will tessellate, or it will come out into these areas where there is no green. And presumably that's a flaw in the tessellation rather than in the math. But I can't say for sure. To be honest, this does not look at all bad for what I was aiming for. I mean, what I was aiming for might not have been a great idea, but this is pretty close to it. So what I was thinking about doing is changing this so that instead of using EVA 301 stopped in. Hello, we're making shaders. So right now we're using this step where we step between a threshold here. We're going to use a different step. So I'm going to duplicate this, and we are going to bring in a different noise threshold, which we're going to do by just subtracting, or adding, I guess, is an easier option. Going to add this, and this, and this, and then we're going to come up with a property, and we're going to make it 0.1, and drop it in here. And let's just see... Oh, I forgot to actually connect it. Hold on. Nothing's changed yet. There we are. And basically, that makes our local vertex offset a little bit different from our green offset. So the amount that is green is different from the amount that is raised off of the surface. But I think I went the wrong direction. You can see here how there are like donut holes in it now. I'm actually... Yeah, that's definitely the wrong way. So all we do is we change this to negative 0.1. And then we mark it dirty. Let it recompile. All right, so now you can see that what we've got is an area of green, and then it tessellates up a notch. So this is the correct direction. It's just that it's not quite the right amount. So what we can do is we can just adjust that a little bit more. I could make it into a property that we could just adjust on the fly, but once we've dialed this in, it should be right. So I don't want it to be showing up as something where, you know, I need to keep tweaking it. That's really close. Let's go ahead and rename this float to edge clip. And then we'll come down here and rename this float to edge height. All right. That's not too bad. I mean, there are some spots where it's still malfunctioning, but by and large, that's more or less what I had intended. To be honest, malfunctioning is fine as long as it looks good, or it looks like I want it to look. Obviously, the texture here is placeholder. It's just a garbage texture. We're going to want to switch out the texture UV map, because right now we're using the same UV map for both of these textures. But the truth is we're going to want to use a different UV coordinate for this coral noise, because that shouldn't be dependent on the UV map of the rock. It's independent of that. So what we want to do is we want to get a world coordinate as our UV map. The problem is that there are 3 axes and a UV map only has 2. So just to show you what that's like, if I were to take the world map position here and drop it into UV, it'll just take the X and Y UV coordinates. And now the problem with that is that it means that anything on the Z axis is going to end up stripy. See? See how this is like stripy? So this is normally where you use a splat map, which is what we're going to do, because I think that they've got a pretty good splat map model built right in. So we can just drop it in. See you when you come back, pink hair. So here's the 4 splats terrain first pass. This is a very basic setup. Very basic, my ass. That's not the one I thought it was. There is another method of doing this that's more basic than this. I just can't remember what it's called. I can't remember what it's called. I thought it was called something splatty. I'm sorry that I'm drinking while I'm on mic here. I'm trying not to make too much noise, but it's a real hot walk home. There's going to be a thunderstorm, so it should be nice at the end. But for the moment, it looks like 4 splats terrain pass might... That's not what I want at all. That's interesting. I wonder what happened to it. I thought for sure I had one. I remember having one. Create orthogonal vector and orthoparams. That's neither of those is correct. That's a shame. Okay, so basically the issue here is that we want to take the normal, and if the normal is not sufficiently aligned, we want to blend between a couple of different values. So if we take the normal, world normal here, there it is. If we take the normal and we do a we want to take this world position and do an append for it. You know what? We have to figure out how to turn off that autosave. It's really slowing stuff down. Here we are. We're just going to take the x and the y coordinates here. And then we're going to do a dot product. The dot product will tell us whether or not these are aligned. And because we know whether or not they're aligned, what we can do is we can lerp between this one and a different one of our choice. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to make this x z, like so. And then we can lerp between here and here. Notice that I've reversed these. That's because if this is 1 or -1, that's fine. I'm going to want to do an absolute value here, because this can be -1, and that's also fine. Well, let's see. Are we still getting the bad? It's really, really, really detailed. But I don't see any really nasty stretching. I think we're okay. Let's go ahead and give ourselves a scale operation. So what we'll do is we will simply, should we scale the final UV coordinate or should we scale the world position? I think we should scale the world position. So let's go ahead and set that up. No, that's obviously not what I want when I type molt. So multiply here. Why is that not? It should be giving me a 3 fork coming out of it, but it's not, so we're not going to do that because that would be annoying. We will instead multiply the UV map, just because otherwise we would have to do it using like an append followed by a split. It would be annoying. Multiply. God damn it! Molt should be the default. I can just hit M, I guess. So we're going to need a property here. It's going to be the, what's it called? Coral density. Go ahead and have the max be 10. And we'll make the material value like, I don't know, 3. This is probably the opposite direction of what we want. We probably want the material value to be like 0.8. We'll find out. So here's what it looks like when we're like this. And you can see how it's got like a lot of fuzz on it. That's actually the texture. I'm not sure what's going on here. I think that the problem here is that we're using 2 different UV maps. Let me just take a quick little look. So this one is going into the albedo lerp. So basically we've got the albedo lerp and we've got the coral normal as separate UV values. So we're going to drop them into the same one. And you're going to see that it's like super dense. It's going to be almost impossible to see. It's like a really, really fuzzy green carpet. See? So what we need to do is make this fuzzy green carpet much, much bigger. So if we grab our coral density. Yeah, so we want the coral density to be very low. 0.001. All right, so it looks like our choice of UV map is exactly opposite of what I wanted, because it's all stripy. So we're going to go ahead and try that. Just reversed. It's not a big deal. Oh, of course. I don't know why I thought it would be the other way around. The visualization in my head wasn't very good. That's still very stripy. Did this actually save? It could also be that I need to make it vary on 2 axes rather than just one. Is it the x-axis that's the stripy axis? It might be. It looks like all of the axes are the stripy axis. Let's go with a YZ. Just change it up and see what happens. This is one of those things where, you know, it's something I'm half-assing. I should really just do it right and do an actual splat map setup, but I don't actually need it to be good. I just need it to work a little. And you can see that this is about as stripy as it's physically possible to be. And it's stripy across the x-axis global. So if we take a look, where is it stripy across? It's actually stripy across... Well, that's interesting. That's not a specific axis. It should be stripy on a specific axis, but it's not. It's stripy on kind of catty corner axis. That's interesting. Let's go ahead and duplicate this rock and pull it up out from the depths so that we can look at it proper. And then we'll scale it up and just take a look at it, because this is something we need to have work. And it looks like it's 100% wrong. Maybe I will try to put it back in the way it was wrong the first time and see whether or not that changes anything. It doesn't seem to change much, does it? Alright, so the real way you're supposed to do this is there are 3 potential mappings for the UV map. There's XY, YZ, and XZ. I've got 2 of them here. So what we'll do is we'll just create the 3rd one. This one will be XY. This one will be YZ. I will make this XZ, I guess. And then there is YZ. Yeah, that's correct. So these are the 3 different UV map possibilities. And basically we want to move... Oh, you know what's happening? I know what's happening. It's lerping between them. So it's not... The lerp is not very... The dot product is very gentle. So what we end up with is a result where the lerping is happening on a 45-degree angle. So what we can do is we can just raise it to a power. We'll go ahead and just hard code the power as 3 for now. No, we still got some striping going on. But the real problem is that it's super, super dense. I don't know. I really just want to make this UV map based on noise. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll just make it based on noise. Is there any way to do that? No, because if I do that, then it won't line up properly. Well, to be honest, we've got several different textures we're going to want to use. We're going to want to blend between a couple of different textures. I don't remember how to do this is the problem. What I need is that terrain splat mapping, but I don't remember the math behind it. So let's go ahead and just take a quick little look. Orthogonal splat map. They're giving me the actual splat maps. I don't need those. Basically, these are not going to ever be truly flat. There used to be a way to do this. I did it. What is orthoparams? No, that's the orthogonal camera type. You know what? For now, let's go ahead and leave it stripy. We'll fix it up later. We can do something dumb. Oh, that's not what we want. That's what we want. Now that is just the dumbest thing, and it should not be done. But let's go ahead and give it a shot. So if we take a look here, what have we got? We got nothing. It's not varying at all. Presumably that's because the density is bad. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Yeah, the density was just too low. So here you can see that what we've got is really stripy results. So what we actually might want to do is take a Y here and then an XZ here. Y is vertical. If it's stripy, I don't mind as long as it's stripy on the correct axis and it feels like it's like deposited layer by layer. So if we take a look at this giant rock, we're not getting too much striping. It's not too stripy anymore. Obviously, we're going to have to do a lot of adjusting later on. But to be honest, I'm okay with this as is. You can see there's a couple of places where it does stripe. We'll figure out what we want to do with those later. For now, this is okay. We will work on it. So if we take a look at the actual rocks we've got going down here, you can see that we have a little bit of striping here and there. But by and large, we've got a basic setup. What I still need to do is have a nice, regardless of how I do that whole shebang, I still need to have a nice height map set up. So that would be this thing over here, bidirectional parallax mapping or parallax occlusion mapping. This is the one that Pinkhair said. Triplanar, that's the name. Thank you. I could not remember the name of it for the life of me. This is what I was trying to get. So that's what we're going to get. So let's go ahead and set this up. Unfortunately for us, the triplanar sampling takes in a texture, which means we're going to have to do the math twice. I guess that's okay, though. So I think that the world position automatically works. I don't think I need to worry about that. But I can just put in this texture here as the texture. Oh, it doesn't take a color. Okay, so I have to actually have the texture. Oh, that's interesting. It takes a texture object. There we are. And I think the world position is automatic. I don't think it cares about that. For tiling, let's go ahead and make that a property. Oh, we've already got a property. It's over here. Coral density. It's a shame. The rain has started to fall. And that means that I'll probably lose power soon. We've been having a lot of problems with that. So I think I might need to actually pass it the world. Anyhow, if I lose power all of a sudden, I won't be able to say anything because it'll just go off. There's no way my router will survive a power outage. So, just to let you know ahead of time, that's something that could very well happen because our power has been bullshit recently. So here's our triplanar sample map, and we multiply the color tint at the end there. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for the normal. The only question is whether or not we are going to need to there's a lot of questions. Never mind. Pinker says that he barely missed he missed what he was doing early on the stream, is barely playing on his end. I'm shocked if it's playing at all, but what I'm saying is I'm going to lose power soon. So, you know, it might not happen, but every time we've had a thunderstorm, I've lost power. So here is the coral density. And if I were to raise it, I'm not seeing any changes. Oh, that's because I no longer have any textures. Here's our blue noise, and then our blue noise again. There we are. It's a little bit low. Make it 0.1. So here you can see this is sort of what we're getting. There's something screwy going on with this one in particular. It might be that I've got two rocks on top of each other. But if we just take a look around, you can see that we've got a lot more screwy pits and shit. I don't know. We'll take a look at that stuff and polish it. But every time that we've got... Look, this here, it's punching through. That should be green. That's interesting. Not sure why that's happening now. I mean, it's not completely make or break, but it is interesting that we... Well, here's what's happening. It's punching up, and then that changes the noise position. That changes the world position, but the world position should be calculated at the same time. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. All right, so here's our situation. We're going to start to use the POM, if I can figure out how. Now that pink hair is back, maybe I'll figure out how. So here's our parallax occlusion mapping. And I'm not sure what it actually outputs. So the out is UVs offsetted for parallax occlusion. The problem is that our triplanar sample doesn't take that as an argument. So this is incompatible with triplanar sampling. So parallax occlusion mapping is exactly what I want, but I can't use it with triplanar sampling. So my choice is I can either use a multiple of the rock, or I can not use parallax occlusion. Using a multiple of the rock is not great because these rocks have radically different scales. And while a rock texture scale is okay, because a big rock and a small rock look very similar, the actual coral texture probably won't scale very well. Let's go ahead and try it. So over here we've got this giant setup for doing triplanar samples and stuff. We're going to move all of this off to the side. What happened? Where does that go? Here? Yeah. How do I stop it from constantly saving? Hold on. There's got to be a way to do this. Do I click? No? Click. No? How did I change the settings? Is it a setting in here? Project settings? Do you think it's in project settings or preferences, maybe? I don't see any shader, so it's not there. External tools? No, it's not that. No. That's annoying. I can't figure out how to do it. Well, I guess we'll live with it for now. Do 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 do. So what we're doing here is we're just breaking it away so that it's no longer quite so tightly bound, and then we can label it. So what is it? C for comment, I think. There it is. Can I press Alt and left mouse? Doesn't work when it's saving all the time, unfortunately. Oh, that's the base normal. That doesn't go in here. Why am I not able to? It's really, really restrictive. That's fine, though. Oh, okay. I did not expect that. Good enough. Let's go ahead and leave a comment here. The frame title is going to be triplanar mode. And then up here we'll do one as well. We dropped another comment in, but I can't grab it because it's inside of the triplanar node. There we are. Rock. Underlying, we'll call it underlying textures stuff. And then here. This stuff should all be pretty straightforward, so we're going to actually move the completely arbitrary stuff off to the side here. Anything that won't actually change at all. Alright, so here's the parallax occlusion mapping. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the textures here. These are the two textures we'll be using. We're going to feed them into a different set of elements. Yep, you're right, Pink Hair. There isn't a reason they should be exclusive. It's just that this happens to be not able to integrate it. Unfortunately for us, this is not a function. I'm not sure what it is. But if it was a function, we would be able to go in and change it. But I think it's like a code segment or something. I can't edit it. It would be trivial to go inside and connect in a UV offset, but I can't. So, oh wait, it's actually the other one that we need to worry about. This, which is also not a function, is it? No, I can't go into it, so it's not a function. All I can do is double-click it to make it recompile for some reason. All right, so here we're going to go ahead and get this going. The parallax occlusion mapper, we're going to take the same default UV, and then we're going to look for the red value. And what we're going to do is we're actually just going to use the same coral texture for now. We may change it later. I don't know what that scale is for. Is that the scale of the... Can I use code blocks as nodes? I don't know about code blocks. I haven't looked into it. I can use functions, but they're not code functions. They're more packaged up values, packaged up nodes. I'm sure there are code blocks. I just have never really looked into them. So the question is, what is scale? I'm not sure. It's not something that pops up over here. That's super weird. So here's the view direction. I think that this all gets put in automatically, doesn't it? The only difference is I might have to change the reference plane. Oh, the scale is probably how high up off the ground it is. Either way, let's go ahead and plug these in. Calculates the offset UVs. So when we do this, we're going to need a texture sample. There it is. Bring the texture on in. And that's going to be, I guess we want to do this. Boom. But we're going to need to have that same setup over here. So texture sample. Texture sample. There it is. See from this. This. And that's going to be there. Now I'm not at all sure that's going to work because there are a lot of values I didn't actually set. Well, it's certainly doing something. I think that it might be just really, really way too high. Because I'm going between 0 and 1, and I think it's like what I really want to do is go between 0 and 0.000001. So let's go ahead and put in a property, and that's a color. There's the float. So let's go ahead and make it 0.05. And we'll call this parallax scale. Oh, it's really coming down out there. Good thing I brought my package inside. Alright, so let's get out of the inside of a rock. And you can see that this is like really crawling. This is ridiculously aggressive. And I think that maybe I'm misunderstanding the scale, or maybe I have to feed it something else. Let's open this up. Inputs. I don't know why this isn't in the comments for this. You think that this would be more aggressive here. The height map displacement texture to be used. Note that you cannot plug a texture sample. Use a texture object. Scale value for the parallax occlusion effect. View direction. You can plug a view direction node in or supply your own. So it says that I might have to actually plug a view direction tangent in. I think I need a view direction set up to spit out a tangent. Yeah. But it seems odd that I would have to set that up myself since it should be the default, right? But it clearly says that there's no defaults, or it clearly indicates that in the code. I'm not sure if that's true, though. I don't see any difference. I think that the view direction is already set up properly. It could be that the UV map isn't set up. I'll just put in the UV coordinate real quick here. If I can find them. Shouldn't the UV coordinates just be like a commonly available thing? The only thing I have here is texture coordinates, which I don't believe is the same thing. I guess I'll just open it up and check. Uses the mesh UVs and manipulates it according to texture tiling and offsets. I guess this is what I want. That's kind of strange that it's so... It's really pretty complicated. I mean, I just want the UV coordinates, and this is what I have to do to get them. I think I can just pull the UV coordinates out of that, but I don't think this is going to help either. I think it is scaling issues. I think I just have to bring the scaling down even further. Oh no, wait, this looks different. Oh my gosh, I did have to manually specify the UV. All right, so here you can see what's going on. We've got a fairly unconvincing height map thing. Problem with this is that the height map is set like really aggressively. 0.05 is obviously much, much too aggressive. We'll work on that in a second here. Well, let's just bring this in. I'm just kind of moving things around a little bit so I can see better. And we'll just bring that down to 0.01. And let that grind. Another option we have, we can blur the red channel, like maybe square it. Or, have a custom red channel that doesn't do this. We could step the red channel. You want to see what it looks like when we step the red channel? That sounds like it might be fun. So here we've got this thing where actually it requires a... This is dumb. So it requires a texture red channel. So we can't actually modify that. We can't send it over a power or anything like that. We have to actually have a separate texture that is already set up properly. Well, let's take a look at clip edges. This will clip the end of you to give you 3D look at the edges. It'll use the tiling get no thanks. Clip silhouette. No, that's fine. The number of interpolation steps to smooth the extrusion result on the side of the layer. So I don't think there's any problems here. I think this is set up correctly. I just have to find a value that fits. Since we're using blue noise, our result is very, very noisy. It's just blobby. It's not like actually corally at all. You can see how what we get is this chatter, and that's why we have to choose a really low parallax scale, because that chatter is really distracting. I think we're going to get it regardless of what we do, but the idea is to minimize it as much as possible. Let's take a look at how this feels in the actual game environment. Let's pop on back over into... There we are. Sorry, I'm adjusting things over on my other screen, as usual. So this might be... I mean, I think we're settled on the fact that we are going to use this kind of approach. There are some questions as to the exact way that we're going to render the objects that we're trying to render. But you can see how this feels until we get so close that it breaks. It feels pretty good. Now, there are some questions about whether or not that tessellation is too aggressive and a couple of other details like that. But in general, this is not a bad sort of setup. Let's go ahead and see how it looks when I put it into other sorts of situations. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the materials section here. This is our rock B material. What we're going to need to do is get a rock everything material. We got an A and a C. Those have to be just flat out deleted, unfortunately. Well, those are matte ones. I modified the wrong material. God damn it. That's fine. It's not a big a deal. It's just dumb. So we're going to want to select it. There it is. So this is the material we have to duplicate, and we're going to name this Rock B Mossy. And then we're going to want to put that into the terrain section. Now I should be able to put Rock B Mossy into any of these and have it work. If... No, unfortunately that's not going to work. But if I do a Rock B like this, I should be able to select all of the Rock Bs. Problem is that they're not all part of this prefab. But for the prefab, if I change this to the new Rock B Mossy texture, it should change for all prefabs. Problem is that these aren't prefabs. These are clones. It's okay, we can select them all and manually just switch them all over to Rock B Mossy. There it is. Boom. So now they should all be Rock B Mossy. And we're going to have to do the same thing with the Rock A, but obviously what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this and make it Rock A Mossy. Change to the new Rock B, my grandfather and me. Yeah, the Sloop John B, huh? German Trekkie says, I haven't checked for a while. I don't know whether you've checked since I started the new game, because I had to discontinue the space game. It was boring. It didn't work out. So if you haven't checked in a long time, you might not have even known that I switched over to a different game. But I did. So now what we're doing is we're switching over all of these Rock A materials to our new Rock A. Switching over all of these Rock A options to our new Rock A setup here. Just Rock A Mossy. Boom. And now for finally Rock C. It's a diving game. So I came up with some ideas as to how to make a decent diving game. So we're going to make a quick little diving game, which of course means that it's only going to take me 1.5 years. There we are. So now we're going to search for Rock C. No, that's not it. It's this one. Boom. All right, now let's take a look at it. Bye, Pink Hair. I might not be back when you get back, depending on how long you take, because we're coming up on 2 hours, which is plenty long for me. So basically the idea is I've been trying to add some fuzz to our rocks. Now this is obviously, we're not using the correct texture. Right now we're just using a blue noise texture. But the idea is I want this fuzz to feel legit. I want the fuzz to feel pretty good. Like it's covering all of the various rocks that we have. So right now the noise value is a little bit too high. We're going to go ahead and just select all of those mossy rocks, and we're changing their values so that they don't look quite as pinholed. So to do that, we're going to reduce the noise scale down to maybe 0.05. What do you think? 0.04? 0.03. Yeah, 0.03 seems okay. Maybe 0.04. Now, the other problem we've got with this is that it's using the rocks UVs, which means that they are often quite stretched. I'll have to either stop stretching rocks or figure out some other method of doing this. Either way, you can see how it's not too bad, other than the texture being complete crap. It's not completely awful. The only other thing I want to do is take an average. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pop open this shader here. This is the shader. What we've got is this local vertex offset takes this step here. This step is just a less aggressive version of this step. What we actually want to do is average those two steps. Unfortunately for us, there is no average, so we have to add and then divide. So we'll just put this here, and then multiply. Wait, can I set up a B here? It can. We'll just set it by 0.5 here. There we are. And what that'll do is it'll make the edges a little bit less sharp. We could also lerp, I guess. Lerping might have been a smarter choice. I'm not 100% sure whether this is better or worse. I think it's better. So the whole point behind this was that we have a world-based coordinate system for these, which means that no matter how many rocks we put in, we have a continuous set of green fuzz across all of the rocks, which is a fantastic way to make this work. The problem is that we're using rock UV coordinates instead of world UV coordinates, which means that we do get some problems where the mesh will reset, but that's okay. It's not too bad, or rather the texture will reset. Overall, this is not bad at all. I think that this is working just fine in concept. In practice, we are going to desperately need a better set of textures. Let's go ahead and try a couple of textures and see what we can do here. These all use the same setup for their textures, so rather than using a blue noise coral texture, let's use one of our dedicated coral textures. The problem is I haven't built a dedicated coral texture for this exact setup, so I think that we're going to have some pretty crappy ones. Let's see. We've got a couple of options here. These are corals that I brought in from outside. Oh, I didn't mean to cancel it. But as you can see, the problem is that they're bloppy in the middle, and then they're just like a pink outline on the outside, which means that what you get when you do that is some really flat areas. Now, if we were using two different coral textures, that wouldn't be so bad. Like, we could just have it so that we used a different coral texture in various places. One of the other things worth noting is that this coral texture might be transparent. I don't think it is, though. I think that that is not a transparency. If it was a transparency, I could use it exactly like I want it to. Don't think it is. So we're going to go back over. So, sorry, a whole bunch of people are talking. Do you know about Kerbal Space Program? Kerbal Space Program 2 came out earlier. Can't wait for Kerbal Space Program 2. Except I think German Trekkie and Pink Hair are talking about two different things. German Trekkie, if you're asking if I know about Kerbal Space Program 1, the answer is that I've only got about 4,000 hours in it. So, sorta. If you're talking about Kerbal 2, it's not made by the same folks, and I didn't see anything in it that was fundamentally more interesting than the original. I expect that I won't be able to play it because I'll probably be put on a store I refuse to pay money in. But sure, I like Kerbal, and I really want a successor to Kerbal. I think that would be great. Kerbal can be modded, so you can mod in solar sails. You can mod in all sorts of stuff. The problem, of course, is that Kerbal's versions keep advancing, and what that means is that the mods keep getting obsoleted. And so if you download CKAN, which is the typical mod deployment system, there are a lot of mods that you can install without going anywhere else, just like using CKAN. But every time a new version comes out, they all fall behind and all get like put into the not compatible bin. It's really quite depressing. But I think that will start to resolve itself as soon as they stop making changes. It's amazing. They came out with the quote-unquote release version, and then they kept making changes. We're on like 1.4 now or something like that, which is fine. I like that they're continuing to have their game advance, but they keep invalidating all of the old mods. I had to stop playing Space Engineers because of that. Here's one that doesn't have too much of a... let's go ahead and make this coral tint color white. So this is like a red. German Trekkie Sue says that the trailer is awesome. Yeah, it's just a cinematic. There's no actual game in that trailer. So, you know, you get what you can, I guess. If I want a cinematic of Kerbal 2, I know where to go. And that would be Matt Lown. All right, so This, I'm not sure. Let me go ahead and just see how it feels in play mode. The problem is that the red here is really... I'm using the red channel, and it turns out that there's a lot of red in this texture, so there's not much of a height map differentiation. Peter Nerlich stopped in. Everybody stops in at like hour 2 of my stream, which is a shame because I really only have 2 hours of stream in my voice before it gives out. So this is not too bad. There are still some blank spots in this texture. I'm going to have to draw my own texture. There's just nothing else to do. I know that I did draw my own texture. It's just a matter of whether or not it works for what I need it to be. And that's this texture here. This one's mine. And it's intended to be colored. Let's go ahead and color it green. And it's just a black and white texture. But you know what? I think I am going to surface the height map depth. I don't think that's something I can dial in after all. There we are. Got to get it to stop saving while I'm in mid-typing. I never realized that the autosave would be this aggressive. I was complaining about how it didn't autosave properly. Well, now it autosaves properly. It's the most aggressive autosaving I've ever seen. Alright, so here we are. And what I can do is I can take this parallax scale and just pump it up. And I should have a better result, or whatever result I want, really. Better or worse. So obviously this is... I believe it's just a noise filter that I put in. I don't think I like painted branches or anything. Yeah, it just looks like a green rock. Yeah, so you can see that I just painted in a texture and punched some holes in it. Pretty basic stuff. Peter Nerlich says, dropping by before sleep to say that I really enjoy every explanatory video you put it on YouTube. Just finished the most recent Eliza episode. Next one comes out tomorrow, I think. I really liked Eliza. If you haven't played Eliza yet, you should go buy it and play it. My computer kicked into overdrive. It's really quite good, and I recommend it. So I could use branches, but the problem is the branches have a lot of alpha texture. I think I'm going to need to make a tiling texture that feels more like coral. I don't think this is the one. But let's go ahead and punch it up a little bit and see whether or not I can get it to feel a little bit better. So if I take the noise scale? No, it's the... First off, I don't think we need this big of an edge length. Let's there. There was a. Oh, I deleted it. Okay, so we're gonna open it up this in shader editor again, and we're gonna put in the scaling as a texture coordinate tiling float. Call this UV scaling. Property. Default to 1. Append. Vector 2. Offset and tiling. I guess we'll call this tiling instead of scaling. Save that. Now we actually have built-in tiling factors here, but you can see that they don't actually do anything. These are leftovers from how Unity does things, and unfortunately that's not how anybody else does them. But we should have a tiling right here, and you can see that it's set to, should have been set to 1, but it was changed by all of them. That's interesting. And so you can see that I can just change the tiling to aggressively make this a much denser set of setups. I think I said thank you to Peter Ehrlich for his comments. If I didn't, sorry. Thank you for enjoying my channel. So obviously the texture needs work, but you can see that this is not a bad approach. I'm thinking that I might do it a couple of different ways, do some different sorts of things. I could have like 2 tiers perhaps instead of just 1 tier. I could have, you know, coral and then outer coral or something. I can also do splat textures between 2 different corals, where I have one that has a transparency or something similar. I'll have to think about how I want to do it. But the best thing about this is that I can start to use it on every surface I want. I don't have to use it on just these free-floating rocks. I can't use it on the terrain because it's not a terrain shader, and that's the main downside. But I could easily use it on these big stone blocks. Right now these big stone blocks are using stone, which is using the tileable rock texture. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and create a tileable rock version of our fuzzy. So this is rock A mossy. We're going to duplicate it and we're going to call it tileable rock mossy. Rock. Tileable mossy. And then we will just switch these over into the tileable rocks. I think we're using B. Having actual coral models and texture will probably help. So I have pretty good coral textures, but the problem is that they are built for actual like mesh coral objects, so they don't tile, and they don't really have any complexity to them, which is the problem. I'm going to have to build a texture that actually has a tiling coral system, and that's probably going to be like maybe a 1024 by 1024 texture with a couple of blotches of distinct different groupings, and then I'll have a tileable fuzz texture behind them. But I'm not 100% sure. 100% sure how I want to do it just yet. What we're going to do is we're going to take this rock tileable mossy and drop it into the game world and just take a quick little look at it. Whoa. That was weird. Let's try that again. So I could change everything over to the rock tileable mossy texture. It's not that big a deal, but for now I'm only going to change those 2, and we're just going to take a quick little look and see how that feels. So the answer, by the way, to this visual, this is not the only visual we'll be using, and what I'm tempted to do is have this be the basic visual, right? Something basic like this, and then have actual particle meshes for more complicated coral, like you know, like funnel coral and stuff. Those can be splatted onto these just by using a custom particle system, which I've already built for the fish. So we're going to be building it for the plants too. In fact, it might be a better idea to build it for the plants first, just because the plants are easier. And the way that works is that I get a coral system, and I take the plants that we're using for our coral setup, and I have the particle system have like 1,000 particles, and I just plop down 1,000 plants near the player. And as the player moves around, I can simply uproot the plants that are behind him, because the player won't care that a particle is in a different place when they come back. They won't care that a tiny frond is now in a different location on the rock. It'll probably be more like 10,000 particles, maybe even more than that. But the basic idea is there, and it shouldn't be too hard to do. It's just a question of exactly how I do it, because I think we'll need to have a couple of different approaches due to the difference in how these things get applied if they're on a vertical surface, you know, if they're on a slant. We'll have to think about it. The good news is that deploying the particles is not as expensive as you might think, so it's not going to be too bad. I'm thinking about stopping for the day. I don't think I can push my luck too much longer with the power that might go out any second, and my voice might go out any second as well. But I am going to go ahead and take some screenshots, post some screenshots, and then I'll be done for the day. So if you got any last comments or questions, now is the time. Just take a very busy screenshot. That should do. All right, we'll go over here and close, 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 close. Thanks for stopping by, Pink Hair, by the way. You were a huge help. I couldn't remember the word parallax, and it turns out that I wouldn't have ever remembered it. Or triplanar. Triplanar and parallax were both your saves. Done some shader work. Next week, particle plants, particle coral, corticals. Tweet. Indie dev. I forgot to actually put a hashtag in it. Too late. Oh well. All right. Thanks for your time, everybody, and I will see you next week, or on Saturday, whatever. Bye.